This video provides a history and analysis of the Black Lives Matter movement and its arguments. We'll begin with Part 1, the history, tracing the origins and evolution of the movement. The movement was sparked in 2013 by the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. The movement was founded by Alicia Garza, who coined the phrase Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors, who created the hashtag, and Opal Tometi, who built the digital platform. Alicia Garza's founding principle was a love note to Black people, stating, "Black Lives Matter. We deserve to be seen as human. We deserve to live." 2014 was a flashpoint, as the movement gained prominence after the deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson and Eric Garner in New York, whose last words, "I can't breathe," became a rallying cry. Key events include the Zimmerman acquittal in 2013, followed by the deaths of Eric Garner and Michael Brown in 2014, and Freddie Gray in 2015, which led to the Baltimore uprising. Further key events include the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile in 2016, responses to the Unite the Right rally in 2017, and the shootings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd in 2020. The 2020 murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd triggered a global wave of protests, with the video of George Floyd's death acting as a major catalyst for a worldwide racial reckoning. The scale of the 2020 protests was immense, with an estimated 15 to 26 million people participating in the U.S., making it one of the largest movements in the nation's history. This became a worldwide movement, with solidarity protests held in over 60 countries and on every continent except Antarctica, demonstrating its global reach. The core principles of Black Lives Matter include ending police brutality, addressing systemic racism, investing in Black communities, and centering Black voices, especially those of Black women and LGBTQ+ individuals. The movement is a decentralized network, not a single organization, described as leaderful rather than leaderless, empowering local leaders and activists. Key policy demands include defund the police to reallocate funds, community oversight for police misconduct, and ending qualified immunity to hold officers accountable. Public opinion saw a dramatic spike in support for Black Lives Matter in 2020, leveling off but remaining higher than pre-2020 levels, according to Pew Research. The protests led to legislative impacts at local and federal levels, with bans on chokeholds, new oversight boards, and the introduction of bills like the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Symbols of the movement include the raised fist, representing Black power and solidarity, the call to say their names, and public protests and marches as a primary form of expression. Patrisse Cullors articulated the movement's ongoing mission, stating, "We are a movement that is centered in love, and a movement that is centered in justice." The movement had a significant cultural impact, changing public discourse around systemic racism and prompting institutional responses and diversity initiatives from major organizations. Now we move on to Part 2, Arguments and Criticisms, examining counter-arguments and critiques of the movement. One key criticism is that the movement's focus on Black lives is divisive, with critics arguing it detracts from racial unity and the principle that all lives matter. Rudy Giuliani, in 2016, articulated this criticism, stating, "When you say Black Lives Matter, that's inherently racist. All lives matter." The movement is also criticized for incidents of property damage, rioting, looting, and arson, which critics argue undermine its message and alienate potential allies. The civil unrest in 2020 resulted in an estimated $1 billion to $2 billion in insured property losses, making it the costliest period of civil unrest in U.S. insurance history. Critics also point to a lack of feasible resolutions due to the decentralized structure, which makes unified goals unclear, and the defund the police slogan deemed politically unfeasible and dangerous. Supporting evidence for this criticism includes the difficulty of negotiation due to a lack of central leadership, policy backlash leading to increased police budgets, and political fallout for moderate Democrats. Another criticism centers on radicalism and violence, citing anti-police rhetoric, the co-founders' self-described Marxist training, and links to specific acts of violence against officers. This slide includes examples of events related to the arguments and criticisms discussed in the video. Critics and others suggest alternative avenues for change, such as the NAACP, which focuses on legislative and legal reform, and the National Urban League, which emphasizes economic empowerment and community services. In summary, this video has covered the history of Black Lives Matter, from its origins to its global impact, and has also outlined key arguments and criticisms regarding its methods and effects. This slide provides image sources for some of the visuals used in the video, acknowledging the original content creators. This slide continues to provide image sources for the visuals used in the video, ensuring proper attribution. This video analyzes the exclusion argument surrounding Black Lives Matter and its racial focus. We will explore the criticisms that suggest the movement's focus is racially exclusive. The central criticism is that the name Black Lives Matter creates an immediate in-group and out-group dynamic. This video will explore the argument that this focus is racially exclusive, prioritizing one race over a universalist or colorblind approach to justice. The name Black Lives Matter is considered by critics as the foundation of the critique. They argue it implies that only Black lives matter or matter more, excluding other races from discussions on justice. The strong negative reaction from BLM activists to the phrase "all lives matter" is often cited as evidence. Critics argue that this condemnation of an inclusive counterphrase is a hostile rejection of a unified, non-racial standard for justice. The Black-centered philosophy is criticized for its focus on Black voices, leadership, and experiences, which critics argue inherently deprioritizes non-Black voices. Policy demands are also often race-specific, and this centering is seen as a way to shut down outside perspectives. Critics point to reports of activists organizing Black-only meetings or safe spaces as literal examples of racial exclusion. They argue this mirrors the segregation the civil rights movement fought against. A common criticism is the perceived alienation of white allies. Critics argue that white supporters are often told to listen and be quiet, which many find alienating and creates a subservient role. BLM's official position is that Black Lives Matter is not exclusionary, stating it's not about only Black lives, but that Black lives are the ones in danger. They use the analogy of a house on fire, where the focus is on the burning house, not all houses. However, critics reject this analogy. They argue that focusing only on one race ignores others in need, such as poor white communities. They see it as a problem-focused racism, rather than a solution-focused unity-justice approach. The argument for exclusion is often paired with a call for racial unity and a colorblind ideal. Proponents advocate for focusing on shared humanity or values, believing that fighting perceived racism with more racial focus perpetuates division. In summary, critics argue the name Black Lives Matter is divisive, the rejection of all lives matter shows a lack of inclusivity, Black-only spaces are literal segregation, and the rhetoric alienates white allies. We have reached the end of this video. We invite you to reflect on the arguments presented. Here are the image sources used in this video. This video examines arguments against the prominent figures and tactical approaches of the Black Lives Matter movement. Areas of critique include leadership, focusing on financial transparency and personal accountability, and strategy, which examines policy goals and protest tactics. Critics argue that the decentralized model of the movement leads to a lack of accountability, no clear counterpart for negotiation, and ease of infiltration by groups with unrelated agendas. Patrisse Cullors, a co-founder, faced significant financial scrutiny over the BLM Global Network Foundation's finances, with reports of personal real estate purchases leading to accusations of hypocrisy. The 2021 purchase of a $6 million mansion by the BLM-GNF, intended as a, quote, creator space, was seen as a disconnect from the grassroots movement and contributed to Cullors' resignation. Figures like Hawk Newsom, associated with BLM Greater New York, are criticized for radical statements, such as his 2020 quote about burning down the system, which critics view as inciting violence. The Defund the Police slogan has been criticized as a failed political strategy. Its ambiguity and perceived unpopularity alienated potential moderate supporters, deemed a strategic failure. Disruptive tactics such as highway shutdowns and public confrontations are criticized for alienating the public, punishing commuters, and risking lives by blocking emergency vehicles. Critics argue that prominent leaders are skilled activists but lack governance experience for long-term change. Some are seen as rooted in ideology rather than pragmatic solutions. A common sentiment from analysts is that the movement is effective at identifying problems but struggles with identifying feasible solutions. In summary, critiques include financial obscurity, radical rhetoric, failed political strategy like defund the police, alienating tactics, and a perceived lack of policy focus. Thank you for watching this video. We can now open the floor for discussion. Here are the image sources used in this video. This video explores a new path for racial healing and practical justice, moving beyond division to create a more unified society. The current dilemma highlights that while the problem of injustice is real, some movements are criticized for increasing racial tension, which can hinder progress. We need an alternative, because an overemphasis on racial identity and militant activism has unfortunately exacerbated, rather than healed, racial wounds in America. The path forward requires a better answer, built on two pillars: universal principles and practical, uplifting policies. Part 1, a unifying foundation, includes equal justice under law, shared humanity, and individual rights and responsibility, focusing on what unites us. This universalist approach is rooted in the proven vision of the civil rights movement, emphasizing judgment by the content of character, not the color of skin. Part 2, practical policy, focuses on moving from protest to concrete, proven solutions that uplift all disadvantaged communities. Solution 1 is economic empowerment through job training, small business support, and financial literacy to foster wealth and break cycles of poverty. Solution 2 aims for safe communities by reinvesting in policing, promoting community engagement, and enhancing officer training. Solution 3 is education reform, empowering parents through school choice to ensure quality education and equal opportunity for every child. Several groups are leading this charge, including the Woodson Center, 1776 Unites, and the National Urban League, each contributing to a more just society. By building on common ground and focusing on universal values and practical solutions, we can achieve a path to healing and a more unified society for all. This slide lists the image sources used throughout this video.